When your cat stretches the moment they notice you, it might look like nothing more than a quick body stretch. Most owners glance at it, maybe think it's cute, and move on with their day. But here's the part almost nobody stops to question. Why does it happen right when you appear? Your cat could stretch at any moment, while they're alone in the room, 5 minutes before you walk in. Yet somehow the timing often lines up perfectly with the second you enter their space. That detail changes everything. Because with cats, timing is rarely accidental. Their communication is quiet, subtle, and easy to miss if you're not paying attention. A shift in posture, a slow blink, a tail movement, each one can carry meaning. And that stretch you see when they notice you may actually be the first signal in a much larger interaction. In the next part, we'll look at something most people misunderstand about this behavior, because your cat might not be stretching for the reason you think. Most people assume the stretch your cat does when they see you is simply about loosening their body. After all, animals stretch all the time. Dogs do it after sleeping, humans do it after sitting too long. So it feels natural to think a cat is doing the same thing. But if stretching were only about muscles, the timing wouldn't look so precise. Watch your cat over the next few days, and you'll probably notice a pattern. They might be resting across the room, half awake, barely moting. Then you step into the space, and suddenly they rise up, extend their front legs forward, and stretch right in your direction. If it were just physical stiffness, that movement would happen randomly throughout the day, sometimes before you enter the room, sometimes long after you've already been there. Yet many cats seem to wait until they've noticed their owner before doing it. That's where behaviorists start looking at the stretch differently. Instead of seeing it as a purely physical action, many specialists consider it part of a social behavior sequence. In simple terms, the stretch becomes a way for the cat to transition from resting mode into interaction mode. You can see this clearly in everyday situations. Imagine you've been sitting quietly at your kitchen table. Your cat is nearby, relaxed, maybe pretending to sleep. The moment you push the chair back and stand up, their attention shifts immediately. They stretch, then begin moving toward you. That stretch acts almost like a reset, switching from passive observation to engagement. Some cats even stretch directly toward the person they're acknowledging. The paws reach forward, the spine lengthens, and the movement points in your direction. It's subtle, but it's very different from a casual stretch done alone in a corner. There's another detail owners often overlook. Cats are careful animals. They don't waste energy on movements that don't serve a purpose. When they repeat the same behavior in response to a specific situation, like someone entering the room, it usually means that behavior has a role in communication. So the stretch you see isn't just about waking up the body. It's often the first step in a short chain of signals that says something much simpler. Your cat noticed you, and they're preparing to interact. And that raises an even more interesting question. If this stretch is connected to interaction with humans, where did the behavior actually come from in the first place? Here's something many cat owners find surprising. The way house cats communicate with people today is not exactly the same way cats communicate with each other. Over thousands of years of living alongside humans, domestic cats have gradually developed a set of behaviors that are used primarily with people. They didn't evolve these signals for hunting, and they didn't need them for interacting with other cats in the wild. They developed them because humans became part of their environment. A good example is meowing. Adult cats rarely meow at each other. In natural cat-to-cat communication, that sound is mostly used by kittens calling for their mother. But when cats live with humans, they continue using it into adulthood because it works. People respond to it. Stretching when they notice their owner may fall into a similar category. When a cat performs that stretch right in front of you, it often happens as part of a greeting sequence. You walk into the room, they notice your presence, and the body movement follows before any other interaction begins. And if you observe closely, stretching isn't usually the only signal happening in that moment. You might see the tail rise upright afterward, the cat may slowly walk toward you, some will blink slowly, or brush past your legs a few seconds later. Each small action builds on the previous one,
forming a quiet greeting routine that many owners never realize is happening. Think about what happens when you come home after being gone for a few hours. Some cats appear at the door almost immediately. They stretch, take a few slow steps forward, and position themselves right where you're standing. Others stretch from across the room the moment they hear your voice, before walking over. The key detail is consistency. When a behavior repeatedly appears during moments of human interaction, it usually means the cat has learned that that behavior fits that situation. In other words, it becomes part of their communication toolkit. What makes this even more interesting is that cats don't show these signals equally to everyone in the house. If you live with other people, you may notice your cat stretches more often when you enter the room than when someone else does. That difference isn't random. Cats pay very close attention to the individuals around them, and their behavior often shifts depending on who they're interacting with. Which leads to the next question. If stretching can be part of a greeting signal, why do some cats seem to do it much more frequently with one specific person than anyone else?
If you live with other people, there's a good chance you've already seen this happen. Your cat might ignore one person walking into the room, but the moment you show up, they stretch, stand up, and start moving in your direction. At first glance, it can look random. Maybe you're the one who feeds them. Maybe you're simply the person they see the most during the day. But cat behavior doesn't usually work that simply. Cats are extremely selective about where they direct their social signals. Researchers studying household cats have noticed that they often show different levels of interaction depending on the person involved. Some people get more eye contact, some get more vocal responses, and some get more body language signals like stretching or tail-up greetings. In other words, cats quietly rank the humans in their environment. You can often see this in everyday situations. Imagine two people sitting in the living room. The cat walks in, scans the space for a moment, and then stretches directly toward one of them before approaching. That choice tells you something. It means the cat feels more comfortable initiating interaction with that person. Comfort is a big deal in the cat world. Unlike dogs, cats don't rush into social contact automatically. They tend to observe first, decide whether the situation feels safe, and only then engage. Stretching can act as part of that decision process. Sometimes it happens when a cat notices a familiar voice across the room. Other times it appears when someone sits down after moving around the house. The stretch acts almost like a bridge between watching and approaching. And interestingly, some cats combine that stretch with another subtle behavior. They angle their bodies sideways for a second before walking forward. It's not a defensive posture. Instead, it's a relaxed display of body language that signals confidence. You'll also notice differences depending on routine. For example, many cats stretch toward the person who has the most predictable interactions with them. Someone who speaks calmly, moves slowly, or spends quiet time in the same room tends to receive more of these signals. Consistency matters a lot to cats. If your daily habits are steady, feeding times, bedtime routines, the way you greet them when you walk in, they begin to associate your presence with stability. And once that sense of stability forms, they become much more comfortable initiating communication. Stretching is one way that communication begins. But there's another layer to this behavior that most owners never notice. Because while the stretch looks simple on the surface, something subtle is happening with your cat's paws at the same time. Something that plays a role in how cats mark the spaces and individuals they feel closest to. By this point, some people watching are probably thinking the same thing. My cat doesn't do that. Maybe you've lived with your cat for years and you've never noticed them stretching the moment they see you. Or maybe they stretch sometimes, but it doesn't seem connected to your presence at all. First, that's completely normal. Cats are individuals, and not every cat uses the same signals to communicate. Some are more expressive with body language, while others rely on different behaviors entirely. But when a cat rarely stretches around their owner, it can sometimes point to two very specific things. The first is environmental comfort. Cats only perform relaxed, full-body movements when they feel safe in their surroundings. Stretching exposes the belly, extends the limbs, and briefly lowers their guard. In a calm environment, that's not a problem, but in a noisy or unpredictable household, some cats stay slightly tense most of the time.
You can see this in subtle ways. A cat who feels completely at ease might sprawl across the floor in the middle of the room, stretch openly, and fall asleep in visible areas of the house. A more cautious cat tends to rest in corners, under furniture, or in elevated spots where they can observe everything. Stretching in front of people requires a certain level of trust. The second possibility is something simpler. Your cat may have learned that the signal doesn't get a response. Animals repeat behaviors that produce results. If a cat stretches in front of someone and that person pauses, looks down, maybe speaks to them, or gives a quick pet, the cat learns that the movement leads to interaction. But if it happens repeatedly without any reaction, the behavior slowly fades. It's similar to how cats adjust their vocal habits. Some cats meow constantly because their owners respond every time. Others become quiet because they've learned their voice doesn't change anything. Body language works the same way. The good news is that communication habits can shift over time. When you begin noticing small signals, stretching, tail lifts, slow blinks, and acknowledging them calmly, many cats start repeating those behaviors more often. You're essentially teaching them that their signals are being understood. And once that loop forms, something interesting tends to happen. Those little stretches that once seemed random begin appearing more regularly, often right at the moment your cat notices you entering the room. Which brings us back to where we started. What looks like a routine stretch on the surface is often a quiet form of communication, one small piece of the subtle language cats use every day to connect with the people they trust.